13,000 men facing 35,000. That's the math nobody wants. You watch that river called the Rhine turn dark with bodies, you count 243 Roman dead against 6,000 Alemanni corpses on mud that used to be grass, and you wonder how numbers lie. August 357, Argentoratum, modern Strasbourg. A philosopher forced into armor beats warlords who've been raiding for years. Why? Because between the screaming and the shield walls, someone kept formation while everyone else forgot how. Battle of Mursa, major in Pannonia. Constantius faces Magnentius in what chroniclers call the bloodiest battle between Romans since the Civil Wars. Over 50,000 dead combined. That's both sides. Roman killing Roman. The flower of the Western field armies wiped out in a single afternoon. The Gallic Comitatus, the mobile field force that's supposed to defend the Rhine, loses most of its veteran units. Magnentius retreats, but he's still got an army. The war continues. Fortified, one tower near Cologne and two forts at Rigadunum, modern Remagen, and Confluentes, modern Koblenz. Everything else, gone. Ammianus lists all become Germanic settlements. The Alemanni don't just raid, they colonize. The Franks do the same in the north. That's a specific count that appears in multiple sources. 20,000. Farmers, townspeople, artisans, dragged east across the Rhine to work Alemanni fields. This isn't just military defeat, it's demographic catastrophe. Whole communities emptied. Born in Constantinople, May or June 331, though exact date is disputed. Son of Julius Constantius, half-brother of Constantine the Great. That family connection is both blessing and curse. Julian's older brother Constantius Gallus survives because he's sick, expected to die anyway. Julian survives because he's 6 years old, too young to threaten anyone, or so they think. Teaches Julian to love Hellenic culture, Homer, Hesiod, the classical tradition. Julian never forgets. Julian performs Christian rites publicly while worshipping the old gods privately. Constantius orders Gallus arrested, brought to Pola, beheaded, face mutilated after execution. The pattern continues. The appointment is calculated. Constantius needs a family member for legitimacy, but someone expendable. Julian has no military experience, no political base, no loyal troops. If he fails in Gaul, Germanic tribes kill him, and Constantius's hands are clean. If he succeeds, Constantius controls Gaul through a relative. Win-win for Constantius. Death trap for Julian. Julian arrives in Gaul with Marcellus as Magister Equitum, Master of Cavalry, and Effective Minder. Marcellus was appointed by Constantius, reports directly to Constantius. Julian gives orders. Marcellus decides whether to follow them. Standard procedure for controlling a junior Caesar. Standard procedure. Bad timing. Alemanni scouts spot him isolated. 30-day siege. 30 days with barbarian axes on the gates, while Marcellus camps 20 kilometers away with cavalry and does nothing. Doesn't march, doesn't send supplies, just waits to see if Julian dies. Julian holds. When the Alemanni finally withdraw, Constantius replaces Marcellus with Severus, a real general. Message sent. Julian pushes east from Reims with 13,000. Magister Peditum Barbatio marches north from Milan with 25,000. The bigger force, the hammer to Julian's anvil. Target, crush the Alemanni confederations in Alsace. Sounds perfect. Then politics. Julian sends 3 cavalry regiments to intercept them as they retreat east, loaded with plunder. They chase the Ladi toward Barbadio's positions. Barbadio sees them coming. Does nothing. His officers actually order Julian's cavalry not to block the road. The raiders cross the Rhine unmolested. 2 of Julian's cavalry tribunes get dismissed for the failure. 1 later becomes emperor. Make of that what you will. Needs them to attack Alemanni on Rhine River islands. Barbadio has 7 barges ready for bridge construction. He burns them, then burns Julian's grain supplies. Then, when Alemanni hit his camp near Augusta Roricorum, modern Augst, and his troops panic, Barbatio retreats in July, declares the campaign over, goes back to Milan to complain about Julian to Constantius. Leaves Julian alone with 13,000 facing every Alemanni king who smells blood. Holding. The rest? Tribal levy. Farmers who become killers when the harvest allows. They hear Barbadio fled. They hear Julian's isolated. A fugitive auxiliary from Barbadio's army swims the Rhine and tells Chnodomar the Romans only have 13,000. The Alemanni think it's done. The envoys swagger in with Chnodomar's demand. Withdraw from our territories that we took with our swords. Julian holds the envoys until his camp walls are finished, then releases them. Message, not leaving. His generals argue, the enemy's concentrated. We can use our training to break them. Waiting just lets them disperse. Julian decides, forward. Alemanni hold the low ground. Thousands in wedge formations. Right flank anchored on woods or marshy terrain. Exact sources differ, but it's blocked terrain. Their cavalry concentrated opposite the Roman right wing. Shields. Behind them in reserve, the Batavi and Regi. Cavalry on both wings, the cataphracts, heavily armored horsemen, on the right. 3,000 cavalry total, which sounds like a lot until you see 35,000 warriors staring back. Each legion and auxiliary unit occupies roughly 100 to 150 meters frontage. Infantry in the center provides the anchor. Heavy cavalry on the right wing is supposed to be the hammer. Charge enemy cavalry, break them, roll up the flank. Light cavalry on the left supports Severus's infantry, provides mobility. Reserve units, Batavi and Rigi, position on rising ground behind the front line where they can see the battle develop and move to crisis points. Behind them, clan warriors, experienced fighters. Behind those, tribal levy, farmers who fight seasonally. The Alemanni left flank, Roman right, is open ground sloping toward the Rhine. This is where Countercharge concentrates cavalry, 3,000 mounted warriors, mix of noble cavalry on better horses with some armor, and tribal cavalry on smaller mounts with minimal protection. But here's the key. Light infantry mixed in, javelin throwers, slingers, men with long spears designed to stab horses. They're positioned in ditches, in grain fields where the crop's tall enough to hide standing men, scattered among the cavalry. He knows most of his men haven't fought a pitched battle this size. He knows they're tired from the march. He knows they see 35,000 Alemanni and wonder if the math works. So he rides, lets them see him, lets them hear his voice. Severus knows Julian's green, but he also knows Julian listens. That's rare in Caesars. No trumpet signals, no synchronized advance. It's tribal. Each wedge decides when to go based on its king's decision, but roughly simultaneous. Suddenly, 35,000 men are moving. The noise is described in sources: war cries, shouting, rhythmic chanting, shields banging against shields. The ground shakes. That's not hyperbole. 30,000 men running makes seismic vibration you feel through boot soles. The Alemanni cavalry hits the Roman right, the cataphracts. Alemanni nobles mixed with light infantry hidden in ditches and tall grain and grass. Roman horses take arrows and spears from below. The cataphract commander, sources call him Innocentius, or place him among the 4 tribunes killed, dies early. His cavalry breaks, full rout. Heavy horse running back through their own lines, trampling infantry, spreading panic. The Cornuti and Bracciati hold, barely. They're Auxilia Palatina, palace troops, the best Julian has, and they lock shields as cataphracts stream past. They scream their Beretus, that unnerving combination of war dance and war cry that's been terrifying enemies since Constantine. Tribune Bainobates commands the Cornuti. He'll die today, but right now he's holding a line that's bending. Stops the retreat physically, horse in front of fleeing men, dragon standard waving. Chronicles say he pointed to where Severus was already shredding the Alemanni right wing and shamed the cavalry back. It worked. The cataphracts rally, turn, rejoin the fight. Point of the wedge is noble warriors, kings and their retinues, the men whose honor demands they fight in front. They hit the Roman line like a battering ram. The first line bends. The Alemanni push through. Roman soldiers start giving ground. The Batavi deserve their own story. They're not Roman originally, they're Germanic. From the Rhine Delta region, island of the Batavi near modern Netherlands, they allied with Rome during Julius Caesar's conquests, provided auxiliary troops for centuries. Tacitus, writing in the 1st century, calls them the bravest tribe, hardened in Germanic wars. They get special status, no tribute required, only obligation, provide warriors. 8 cohorts of Batavi infantry serve as personal bodyguard for emperors from Augustus to Galba. When the Praetorian Guard needs elite troops, Batavi get the call. It's trained skill. By Julian's time, 3 centuries later, the Batavi Auxilia Palatina unit at Argentoratum is descended from those original troops. Still elite, still specialists. They hit the Alemanni breakthrough from the flanks. This is combined arms doctrine. First line absorbs the charge, slows momentum. Second line strikes while the enemy's disorganized from breaking through. The Batavi and Regi don't charge headlong. They move in formation, shields locked, creating new front to the left and right of the penetration. Squeeze it closed. Ammianus uses the phrase savage struggle repeatedly. Alemanni nobles trying to break Roman formation by sheer ferocity. These are men whose entire culture centers on personal combat prowess. Losing a fight means shame. Running means dishonor. They fight until they drop. Romans in testudo, overlapping shields, front rank holding, second rank stabbing over and around the shields, stabbing at unprotected sides, legs, faces. For a while it's unclear who's winning. The line bends, doesn't break, but bends. They plug gaps, rotate exhausted men out of the front rank. That's Roman doctrine. Rotate fighters so nobody stays in the kill zone too long. If they break through here, the Roman army splits, and 13,000 becomes 2 groups of 6,000 running in different directions. On the Roman left, Severus has already routed the Alemanni right flank. His troops wheel inward, start hitting the Alemanni center from the side. The rallied cataphracts and Julian's cavalry hit from the right. The Alemanni infantry finds itself compressed, can't maneuver, can't swing weapons effectively. They're packed too tight. The Romans pursue to the Rhine. Sources describe swords dulled from killing, spears broken, then javelins thrown at men trying to cross the water. 6,000 Alemanni dead counted on the field, thousands more drowned. Ammianus Marcellinus, writing 40 years later, but using Julian's own memoir and eyewitness accounts, says the exact numbers. Many thousands, swept away by the current, uncountable. He makes for boats prepared at Concordia, modern Lauterburg, 40 kilometers downstream. Roman cavalry corner him in woods near the river. He surrenders with 200 attendants and 3 close companions. Brought before Julian, who's still in armor, probably still covered in dust and blood. Cnodamar begs for mercy. Julian sends him to Constantius at Milan, from Milan to Rome. They keep him on the Caelian hill. He dies there 2 years later, 359, never seeing the Rhine again. Soldiers who train together versus warriors who fight for personal glory. The Romans didn't win because they were better fighters, man for man. They won because when the cataphracts broke, someone kept the line intact. When the center bent, reserves moved. When the Alemanni charged, shields locked. That's how you beat 35,000 with 13,000. You don't panic. If you value documented military history and tactical analysis like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script is researched and factual, using sources from Ammianus Marcellinus' Res Gestae, the primary eyewitness account written between 390 and 396, and published in multiple volumes covering years 353 to 378. We've also consulted modern military scholarship, including the Battle of Argentoratum analysis from the Journal of Military History, published 2015, and archaeological reports from the Musée archéologique de Strasbourg, published 2021 by Jean-Jacques Gat's successors. Now back to the information. Julian refuses violently. Sources say he rebuked them with anger. Petulentius milites increpabat. He knows what happens to family members Constantius thinks want power. The troops back down, for now. All Alemanni families, women, children, elderly, not just warriors, marched back across the Rhine. Property confiscated, farms redistributed to Gallic civilians or Roman veterans. The message is clear. This is Roman land again. You can raid, you can fight, but you cannot settle here permanently without Roman permission. He marches 16 kilometers into Alemanni territory through snow, yes, snow in late August in the mountains, and forest until weather forces him back. This is the Agri-Decumates region, the Black Forest territory Rome evacuated in the mid-3rd century during the crisis years. Terrain is difficult, thick forest, mountain passes, few roads. Julian's pushing through to demonstrate reach. To show the Alemanni that even east of the Rhine, Rome can strike you, finds a fort originally built by Trajan in the early 2nd century. Sources don't name it, but describe it as in the Black Forest near a river crossing. Stone foundations still standing. Julian orders reconstruction. Roman engineers work fast. Timber palisade, ditch, gate towers. Small garrison, maybe 200 men. It's symbolic. Rome planting the eagle east of the Rhine again. Not permanent reconquest, just presence. Grants the anxious Alemanni a 10-month truce. Winter's coming. Campaigning season ends. Julian needs the truce too. His troops are exhausted. Supplies need replenishing. The truce includes terms: return Roman prisoners captured during the Civil War years, cease raids, acknowledge Roman authority. Some kings agree, others don't. The Salian Franks and Chamavi tribes have been raiding in parallel to the Alemanni. They've seized land in modern Belgium and Netherlands, hitting Roman positions along the lower Rhine and Meuse rivers. Julian marches north, probably late spring 358 when weather improves and rivers are passable. The Sali and Chamavi don't have the numbers Cnodamar assembled. They're fragmented individual bands under separate chieftains. Julian defeats them in detail, fights one group, forces submission, moves to the next. Terms become tributarii, tribute payers, annual payments in goods, warriors for Roman service, hostages as guarantee of compliance. Specific locations unspecified in surviving sources, but positioned to control river crossings and trade routes. These are limitani positions, permanent garrison forts. Engineers rebuild walls, dig ditches, construct barracks, garrisons of local recruits and transferred troops. The lower Rhine frontier starts functioning again. Westralp's tribe was shattered at Argentoratum. New leaders emerge, Horterius and Sermarius, paramount kings of remaining Alemanni confederations. They're rebuilding after the defeat, bringing tribes back together. Julian doesn't wait for them to consolidate. Invites Horterius and Sermarius to parley, makes it clear, submit or fight. They've seen what happened to Cnodamar. They submit. Takes hostages from Horterius' own family. Won't release them until every Roman prisoner comes back. Horterius complies. Thousands of civilians return to Gaul. 7 forts and town walls in the Middle Rhine. Ammianus names 2. Bana, modern Bonn. Bingium, modern Bingen. The others aren't specified, but archaeological evidence from sites along the Middle Rhine shows 4th century fortification layers, consistent with Julian's campaign. Reconstruction efforts are massive. Each fort requires engineers, labor gangs, materials, time. Julian forces his tributary Alemanni to provide supplies and workers. Roman military engineers supervise. 350s matching Julian's timeline. each positioned at river crossings, important road junctions, vulnerable points where raiders historically struck. The cumulative effect, fortified line restored. Not as dense as the pre-crisis frontier, but functional. Enough positions to observe enemy movements, enough garrisons to respond to raids, enough strength to deter casual incursions. 3 years after Julian arrived, knowing nothing about war. Argentoratum is the pivot. Before, barbarians raid at will, Romans react. After, Romans cross the river, barbarians submit. Ammianus says 35,000. Modern scholars question it. Some say 25,000. Some say the number includes non-combatants. Battlefield archaeology can't confirm. No mass graves found at the exact battle site near modern Strasbourg, though excavations in 1947 to 1953 by Jean-Jacques Hatt found destruction layers at Argentoratum itself dated to 355 and later 4th century, consistent with the raiding period. Roman general Severus expected it, halted at the edge, waited. But on the other flank, the cataphracts rode into it. Heavy armor makes you strong against cavalry, vulnerable to infantry striking from below at horses. It's described as a combination of shout and rhythmic movement, unnerving to enemies, building morale. Modern military historians compare it to the Maori haka, or Scottish battle cries, psychological warfare through coordinated noise and motion. The Batavi historically served as the emperor's personal guard since Augustus. Swimming rivers in armor using shields as floats is documented in multiple sources, including Ammianus' account of a 357 river crossing, where the Cornuti float on their shields as on a canoe. These aren't conscripts. They're professionals who drill together, fight together, trust the men on their flanks. This confuses people. Why dismount your cavalry? Honor. Alemanni culture demands leaders fight in front. Mounted nobles charging ahead looks cowardly compared to standing in the infantry line where everyone can see you fight. It also intimidates tribal levy. If the king fights here, you better fight too. But tactically it's a mistake. You give up mobility, shock value of mounted charges, the height advantage. Romans exploit this. Keep the Alemanni pinned in infantry combat where Roman formation wins. Alemanni who kept their shields used them as rafts, exactly what the Batavi do, but improvised, panicked. Many drown anyway, current too strong, armor too heavy. His surrender with 200 attendants tells you he's not alone, he's got a royal retinue. Bodyguards? They all give up together. This is important. It means coordinated surrender, not battlefield capture. Schnottmar negotiates. Rome doesn't just kill prisoners, it integrates them. The 20,000 Alemanni captives distributed across Gaul as forced labor in the aftermath. That's deliberate economic warfare. Take their workers, rebuild Roman farms, signal dominance. Uncle's dead. Cousin's dead. Julian's half-brother Constantius Gallus was Caesar before Julian, executed 354 after falling out with Constantius. Julian knows the pattern. Show ambition, die. So he refuses the title violently in front of witnesses. Survival tactic. Doesn't work long-term. 360, Constantius orders Julian to send his best Gallic troops east for the Persian War. The troops refuse to leave Gaul. They proclaim Julian emperor anyway. This time he accepts. February 360, civil war looms. Constantius dies. November 361, before they fight, Julian becomes sole emperor. The sources we're using matter. Ammianus Marcellinus is the primary. Greek career soldier born around 330, served as protector, staff officer, under Ursicinus, and later Julian himself during the Persian campaign. He wasn't at Argentoratum. He was in Gaul earlier, in 355 during the suppression of Silvanus' revolt, but by 357 he's reassigned. His account comes from Julian's own memoir, which doesn't survive, but Ammianus had access, and from eyewitness interviews with Julian's officers. He writes the Res Gestae starting around 390, finishes by 396. 18 books survive, covering 353 to 378. The earlier books, 96 to 353, are lost, but he includes details that cut against Julian too. The angry refusal of the Augustus title, the dependence on subordinate generals like Severus, the cavalry route. He's not making Julian perfect. He's making him great, despite flaws. Modern historians trust Ammianus for military details because he knows how armies work. His descriptions of formations, tactics, unit movements match archaeological evidence and comparative analysis of other 4th century battles. Zosimus, late 5th century Byzantine historian, summarizes the battle in his Nova Historia. Adds little to Ammianus, but independently confirms the event. His value is in covering the earlier Civil War period, the Revolt of Magnentius, 350 to 353, which Ammianus' lost books covered. That context matters. We know the Rhine defenses collapsed during the Civil War because Zosimus describes the Alemanni invasions starting 357 to 1953. Fire damage dated to 355 matches Alemanni raiding. Later 4th century rebuilding matches, Julian's restoration. The Musée Archéologique de Strasbourg holds artifacts. Burnt beams, collapsed walls, coin hoards with terminal dates in the 350s. physical evidence of the collapse and recovery. Finds from 4th century Germanic sites across the Rhine, asymmetric weapons, simple spear points, axes, match Ammianus's descriptions of Alemanni arms. Roman finds in the region, armor scales, helmet fragments, gladius and spatha swords, confirm Roman equipment. No battlefield artifacts directly from Argentoratum, but the comparative data fits. Several of the forts Julian rebuilt in 359 survive as archaeological sites. Bona, modern Bonn, has excavated 4th century fortification layers consistent with Julian's rebuilding. Bingen, same. The construction dates to late 350s. The materials, local stone, timber brick, match Roman military engineering of the period. Roman infantry doctrine in the 4th century has evolved since the early empire. By Julian's time, you have limitanae frontier troops, static garrison forces, lower quality, and comitatenses field armies, higher quality, mobile. Within the field armies, legions and auxilia palatina. The auxilia palatina are the elite. Units like the cornuti, batavi, bracciati, regi, 500 men each, tight-knit, well-drilled. Formation fighting is everything. The testudo, shield wall, is a weapons platform. Front-rank shields lock, second-rank spears over the top, third-rank javelins or reserve. The Alemanni wedge tries to break this by concentrating force at a point. Roman counter, depth. Second line deploys to backstop the first. Reserves plug gaps. But they're vulnerable to infantry if unhorsed. The Alemanni mix light infantry with cavalry to target horses. At Argentoratum, the cataphracts charge unsupported into prepared positions. That's why they rout. The wedge formation works if you break through. They almost break through. But Roman reserves stop it. 35,000 Alemanni camped near the Rhine have good water, but feeding that many without Roman logistics, they're living off plunder. Harvest season approaches. Many want to go home. Time pressure for Knodomar. They know formation holds. They win. Julian trusts them. Sustained effort. Once they broke, the Romans pursued relentlessly. No quarter in the pursuit. The tributary arrangements with Alemanni kings. They pay tribute, provide labor, submit to Roman authority, create a buffer. Alemanni who cooperate get peace. Those who resist get devastated. Later sources, Zosimus, church historians, even though they hate his paganism, acknowledge his military genius. The victory opens the path to sole emperorship. Punitive raids across the Rhine to keep tribes deterred. Economic reconstruction in Gaul itself. Lower taxes, rebuilt farms, restored trade. It's comprehensive. Marathon, Cannae in reverse, Agincourt, Rorke's Drift. Smaller disciplined forces defeating larger undisciplined ones. Argentoratum is a textbook example. Another fire. Another collapse. And in the early 5th century, the name disappears from records, replaced by Stratusbergum. The Alemanni return. Not in 357. Julian stops that, but eventually. By 410 or so, they cross the Rhine again, this time permanently. They settle Alsace, settle Switzerland, and the Roman name Argentoratum vanishes from history. The battle Julian won in 357 buys time. 50 years, maybe 60. Then the frontier breaks for good, long enough for reserves to arrive. Formation held,